The first sign of the deterioration of Sun Quan's judgment occurred in 230, when he sent his generals Wei Wen and Zhuge Jie to seek the legendary islands of Yizhou and Danzhou. They sailed a navy of 10,000 men seeking to conquer the islands, despite strenuous opposition from Lu Xun and Chuan Kong. The climate and geography was dangerous for mainlanders since ancient times, but they were able to find one of the islands, only after 8,000 to 9,000 of them had already been lost to sickness, however. The voyage returned in 231 with several thousand captured men, but Sun Quan simply executed Wei Wen and Zhuge Jie rather than admit it was his own fault. When he spoke to Chuan Kong again, he was told, "I think that those that didn't attempt to dissuade you from launching this campaign aren't loyal towards you, Your Majesty." That same year, against the advice of Yu Fan, Sun Quan sent his navy to Gongsun Yuan to purchase horses. He had been banished to Xiao province in 220 for being too candid, outspoken and direct. As such, he offended Sun Quan several times. Even after being cast out, he was still concerned about state affairs, so wrote to Sun Quan warning him against sending his fleet across the sea, but was ignored. Just as Yu Fan predicted, the venture ended in failure when the navy was intercepted on the return route and destroyed. Sun Quan regretted his decision, so summoned Yu Fan back to Jianyi, but by now he had already died in exile. Throughout these years, Lady Bu was unable to receive support from the Crown Prince Sun Deng, who treated Lady Shou much better. Sun Quan promoted Chuan Kong, who then married his daughter, Big Tiger Sun Luban. Little Tiger Sun Luyu went on to marry Zhu Ju, who Sun Quan deemed as proficient in handling both civil and military affairs, with the potential to inherit the legacy of Lu Meng. He also highly trusted Lu Yi and appointed him as the supervisor of a bureau in charge of auditing documents from all those within the Wu government. He was a harsh, cruel and treacherous man who freely abused his power by falsely accusing many officials of serious offences. Zhu Ji and the Imperial Chancellor Gu Yong fell victim to his abuses of power, although Lu Yi was ultimately unsuccessful in his schemes. Many other officials feared that they would offend Lu Yi by speaking up, and so remained silent. The following year, Gongsun Yuan sent messengers and offerings to become a Wu subject. Sun Quan would have yet another misadventure, but for now he was ecstatic, and sent men to grant Gongsun the 9 bestowments. Against the advice of nearly every single one of his highest advisors, especially Zhang Zhao, he sent a detachment of 10,000 men to assist Gongsun in a campaign against Wei. Once the army arrived, they were betrayed by Gongsun, who seized the troops after their commanders were all put to death. Once that happened, Sun Quan wanted to lead troops himself, and even Lu Xun couldn't talk him out of it. To his credit, he eventually calmed down and didn't follow through with the plan, and even went to Zhang Zhao's house later to apologise. Sun Deng left the western part of the empire in Lu Xun's hands and returned to Jianyi in 232, perhaps concerned about his father's lacking judgment. When Pan Zheng also returned to Jianyi from Wuchang, he learned that Sun Deng had already spoken up numerous times about Lu Yi's behaviour, but Sun Quan refused to listen to him. Pan Zheng decided to take matters into his own hands by assassinating Lu Yi at a banquet, but he secretly found out that his life was in danger, lied that he was sick and didn't attend. Despite the failure of the plan, Pan Zheng didn't stop speaking up about Lu Yi's wicked deeds every time he had the opportunity. Over time, Lu Yi lost Sun Quan's favour until eventually all trust was gone. In coordination with Zhuge Liang's final northern campaign, Sun Quan invaded Hefei. At the same time, Lu Xun and Zhuge Jin attacked Xiangyang with the strategy of trying to attract Wei relief forces and destroying them. Wei's generals correctly saw through the situation, however, and simply allowed Sun Quan to siege Hefei until his food ran out. When Cao Rui arrived on the scene with reinforcements, Sun Quan withdrew, as did Lu Xun and Zhuge Jin. Sun Quan's clear thinking was lacking, but he was still able to make rational decisions from time to time. In 235, Cao Rui looked down on Wu by offering a trade of horses for pearls, jades and tortoise shells. Sun Quan ignored the insult and made the exchange for the betterment of his empire, reasoning that his people needed horses far more than pearls, jades or tortoise shells. 3 years later, he also correctly read the situation when Sima Yi invaded Gongsun Yuan. Despite his prior rage against him, Sun Quan didn't immediately refuse his request for help. He made plans to take advantage of the situation if they got stuck in a stalemate, but Sima Yi was able to conquer Gongsun quickly. In the same year, he also recognised that Lu Yi had been abusing his powers, and now understood the gravity of the situation. He was removed from office, then Gu Yong was put in charge of leading the investigation. Some officials proposed that Liu Yi be burned or dismembered as to highlight the severity of his crimes, but Gu maintained his composure and performed his job properly. When Sun Quan asked for Can Zi's opinion, he stated that burning or dismemberment should not be used in a civilized age, so Sun Quan did not. He did, however, further confirm his trust in his high-level officials by sending Yuan Li as a representative to meet them. He sought their views on how the system could be reformed and improved, but to his disappointment, many of them gave excuses. Zhu Gejin, Bu Ji, Zhu Ran and Lu Dai were not in charge of civil affairs and said it was best left to officials like Lu Xun and Pan Jun. Sun Quan personally wrote an emotional letter to them where he blamed himself for the recent problems with his administration while urging them to speak out honestly whenever they saw faults with him. Bu Ji wrote to him numerous times to defend those who had been wrongly accused. Although Sun Quan didn't listen to every piece of advice, Bu Ji ultimately saved many officials from doom. The final major assault launched by Sun Quan was in light of Cao Rui's death in 239. He rejected a strategy to attack across 4 different fronts in coordination with Shou, and so in 241, Sun Quan's campaign ended in failure. Around this time, he also had his generals destroy a number of levees near the border with Wei, creating large areas of flooding in order to obstruct potential attacks from Wei. The Crown Prince Sun Deng passed away in 241, which left open the issue of succession and appears to mark a decline in Sun Quan's mental health. When he appointed the 18-year-old Sun He as his official crown prince, his mother became esteemed, so all other consorts were expelled from the palace. He also favoured his 4th son Sun Ba, so allowed him to have the same staffing level as a crown prince. A number of officials rejected this idea, as it naturally pitted the brothers against one another. They strongly urged him to uphold Confucian values and ensure Sun He was made crown prince, but Sun Quan wouldn't listen. He did, however, notice their rivalry and the polarizing effect it had on his subjects, so he banned his sons from interacting with the outside world and ordered them to study. He soon lifted this ban, however, as Yang Dao pointed out that their isolation disappoints the upper class of the outside world. It allows rumours to spread around the brothers, as nobody can meet with them in person. By the next year, the Sun brothers had separate estates, which led to the emergence of 2 opposing factions. Sun Liuyu, Zhu Ju, Lu Xun, Zhu Geke, Gu Tan, Teng Yin, Shi Ji, Ding Mi and Wu Kan supported Sun He. Sun Luban, Chuan Kong, Chuan Ji, Bu Ji, Lu Dai, Lu Ju, Sun Hong, Wu An and Sun Qi supported Sun Ba. When Sun Luban tried to get her sister to support Sun Ba as well, she refused, and their relationship became strained as a result. The brothers' relationship also deteriorated further when Sun Ba began to scheme on how to claim heir status over Sun He. There were still vacancies available in their estates, so many officials nominated their relatives in hopes of building connections. Chuan Kong supported Sun Ba because his own son Chuan Ji had become his close aide. When Chuan Kong spoke to Lu Xun about this, Lu pointed out how many of the candidates were not up to standard. Lu, on the other hand, supported Sun He and foresaw that conflict would inevitably arise. He wrote to Chuan Kong to try and warn him about it, but he ignored the advice, so their relationship collapsed as well. Sometime in early 244, Lu Xun succeeded Gu Yong as the Imperial Chancellor of Wu. I may be lacking in virtue, but by heaven's grace I managed to ascend the throne. The Empire has yet to be unified, and evil villains line my halls. I am filled with anxiety and cannot rest well at night, but your great wisdom and moral virtues are apparent. Today, I appoint you as Imperial Chancellor in charge of both internal and external affairs. Imperial Chancellor, Governor of Jing, Right Defender of the Capital, and Chief Overseer in Wuchang, you are expected to promote moral virtues, respect and follow my orders, and make achievements worthy of esteem. You're now in charge overall, so you should maintain discipline among the officials and command their respect even from afar. Wu Zan maintained close contact with the senior Lu Xun, who was stationed in Wuchang, keeping him informed on events. There were rumours that Sun He could no longer secure his position as crown prince, so they spoke up for him and wanted Sun Ba relocated away from the capital. Lu Xun wrote that the crown prince is a legitimate heir apparent, so he should have a foundation as solid as a rock. The Prince of Lu is a vassal and a subject of the state, so he should receive far less favours. If both of them know their places, then all of your Majesty's subjects will have peace. Wu Tan tried to persuade Sun Quan to reassign him along with Yang Zhu, but Sun Ba's supporters responded to this threat by attacking Wu Tan, who was arrested and eventually executed. Sun Quan cut certain officials off from his sons if they only supported him for personal gains, but this didn't stop Sun Ba's desires. Indeed, when Lu Xun tried to intervene, Sun Ba accused him of many crimes, each one successfully provoking Sun Quan more and more. In turn, he repeatedly scorned Lu Xun, who wanted to come to Jianyi in person but was denied. I humbly beg your Majesty, to the point of bleeding from my forehead, to reconsider this issue carefully. Lu Xun's nephews were sent into exile, while emissaries kept arriving from Sun Quan ordering him to stay out of the issue of succession, causing him to die in frustration. Another internal issue is that Sun Luban bore a grudge against her half-brother Sun He and his mother Lady Wang, one of her father's concubines. She was worried that they would take revenge against her after Sun He became emperor, so she frequently spoke ill of him in front of her father. Fanned by gossip, such as Lady Wang being happy when Sun Quan gets sick, he blamed her for Sun He's ambition and became furious with her. She later died in distress, while Sun He lost all favour from Sun Quan. Sun Luban noticed that he increasingly favoured Sun Liang now, so was eager to gain him as a political ally. She advised Sun Quan to arrange a marriage between Sun Liang and a younger relative of her husband's, and he agreed. At the same time, Sun Quan became fed up with Ba's constant attacks against her, so carried out an inexplicable combination of actions. He made Sun Ba commit suicide while deposing Sun He, who hadn't even committed any crimes. Youngest son Sun Liang was then made crown prince against the opposition from many officials. If anyone disagreed with Sun Liang being the new crown prince, or supported Sun Ba, then they were either executed or exiled. Sun Quan frequently summoned Taoist priests to his court, such as Ji Shuan, but in 247 he also met a Buddhist monk from Jiaoji. After having numerous conversations with him, Sun ultimately decided to convert, and showed his support by establishing the Buddhist temple named Jianchu Si in the region. In 251, Sun Quan created the first empress of his reign, Sun Liang's mother Consort Pan, who was the rare example of someone becoming an empress from a slave. It could now be seen that among Sun Quan's many favoured concubines, Pan Shu held a special presence, which had now been valued. Sun Quan was getting very old, 69 by this point, and later that year he realised Sun He was blameless, so wanted to recall him from exile. Sun Luban and Sun Jun, who had shown support for Sun Liang's ascension, persuaded him not to do this. Then Sun Jun further persuaded him to commission Zhuge Ke as the future regent. Even though Sun Quan had misgivings about him, it was a time where virtually the entire empire was awed by Zhuge Ke's military victories, and was convinced he was the right choice for regent. As Sun Quan neared death, Empress Pan fell sick as well, due to the stress of continuously attending to him. She was murdered while in deep sleep, but whodunit remains a controversy. Wu officials claimed her servants were unable to stand her temper, so strangled her in her sleep. Other historians think the officials are to blame, as they feared Empress Pan would seize power as dowager after Chuan's death. In the winter of 251, Sun Quan sent Liu Kang back to Chaisang. With tears in his eyes, he told him, "Previously, I believed slanderous rumours and failed to understand your father's well-meaning advice. I have let you down, but I had all the documents containing allegations against Lu Xun burned so that nobody can ever see them." Sun Quan passed away half a year later at 70 years old in 252 and was buried in a mausoleum at the Purple Mountain in Jianyi. Sun Liang lost both his parents in rapid succession that year, but went on to become the new emperor of Wu, with support from Sun Luban and Sun Jun.